Innovation and creativity are central to entrepreneurship. But what happens when you go beyond the edge? The Frontier Entrepreneurship Podcast brings you the world's first, the disruptive, the avant-garde. We take you to the frontier in conversation with the entrepreneurs who are the forerunners of the industries of the future. Get to know their world with co-hosts Braden, Kemp, and Tracy Morningstar. Is it possible to decentralize finance? Will blockchain technologies lead the way to a new era of investing for all? A world where people come together and instantly start their own funds in default compliance with regulators and governments. Is such a scenario nothing but a distant utopia? Or have we already arrived on the shores of the possible? Today, we take you to the frontier with Ben Su, lawyer and co-founder of the Web3 venture-backed startup, Capita.
Ben, welcome to the Frontier Entrepreneurship Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Actually, I want to just kind of clarify a little bit. We started building out this company focusing on, building DAOs or decentralized autonomous organizations on the blockchain. But as we dive deeper into the industry, we found that, whether it's a DAO or LAO or whatever, at the end of the day, we're solving a real life problem. Our customers are, investment funds, angel syndicates, some incubators. For example, the tier 1 schools in the United States, we're talking with them to start these investment groups. So we completely removed DAOs out of our marketing material because we figured that was, making a lot of the majority of our current customers out of the conversation when we use a hyper euphoric Web3 term with them. Yeah.
Ben, you're a lawyer. What made you leave that career path that's seen as, secure to jump in and become an entrepreneur and start this business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was actually chatting with a mentor who was also a lawyer and who was also a tech entrepreneur. He's actually our advisor that contributed a lot to the founding of this company. So what I've learned from him is that, in law or medicine or any other professions, everything is so transaction based. Meaning, if I help a client this time, I put them on retainer, the value I'm creating is on a per transaction basis. So where in the venture world, you're able to build something called equity value, meaning each customer you're helping, the more customers you help, increases your equity value or the impact that you're making at exponential rate. And it's no longer, a linear increase because, working as a lawyer, you help 200, 300 clients a year. You're capped at the impact. Your impact is capped at 200, 300 clients a year. Whereas if you build something in technology, you could increase the impact and the value that you're creating in an exponential fashion. So that's kind of the reason why I left. I guess another thing that's on top of my mind is financial leverage. So I think in the past decade, the zero interest rate from the central banks around the world has created a super friendly environment for startups. I think in my parents' or grandparents' generation, if you wanted to start a 0 to 1 company, if you want to, make innovation happen, you have to basically mortgage your house, right? Yeah. And the cost of failure is a lot greater than what it is today. So according to my mentor, he said, the cost of the failure of, working on a 0 to 1 company today is a bunch of good lessons that you'll be learning. And, versus losing your house over it, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Was that move, would you consider yourself a natural entrepreneur, like something you always wanted to do, or is that an uncomfortable move for you to jump out of the security?
To be honest, I went to law school having the mindset of, if I were to run a technology company one day, what kind of knowledge do I need to have? So I picked all the courses, in tax, IP, corporate securities, contracts, basically everything I need to know in order to, do the things I'm doing on a daily basis today. So I've always had that, I would say, entrepreneurial DNA. I mean, when I was in undergrad, I was doing my co-op in Chop River, which is a nuclear research facility in the Ottawa Valley. I started my first business, providing tutoring services to the military, to the soldiers who are trying to, get a second career. I was teaching them, math, physics, and stuff. So, made some cash on the side. So that was, very rewarding for me. So I knew that, I've always wanted to start my own business. So yeah, I guess I identify as an entrepreneur within my DNA.
That's a long game on entrepreneurship. Tracy, you have something to add there?
Yeah, you had mentioned mentorship a few times. You talked about your mentor. Could you give us a little bit more how that relationship formed?
Yeah, absolutely. So the mentor or / advisor we have, his name is Andrew Arruda. So he founded his first company called Ross Intelligence. It was one of the hottest technology startups in 2015-17 era in Toronto. So they were working on using artificial intelligence, machine learning to help lawyers do legal research, right? So the company did super well. They moved to San Francisco. They were incubated by the Y Combinator, which is, like the greatest incubator in Silicon Valley. And he's Forbes 30 under 30, and now he's working on his second company. He's angel investing. So I've been, before when I was in law school, I used to follow him on LinkedIn because I think it's so cool. He went to law, but then he chose a path that was less traveled. He was making a lot of impact in terms of, democratizing legal knowledge, making legal knowledge cheaper for lawyers, especially, lawyers who are still on the, who are still learning things, making the information so readily available for them to learn. So I thought that was, a super scalable way of, achieving his potential and make a contribution to the world. So I followed him on LinkedIn for all these years. In 2020, I saw a LinkedIn update that, he's starting his second company, and I cold messaged him. So I cold messaged him, connected with him as, friends, not just a follower on LinkedIn. And then we chatted. I bounced off the idea I had about the current company I'm working on with him. And then he really helped me in terms of, refining the idea, thinking about the value propositions to the people whose problem that we're solving. And then at the end of the day, he put together a contact list. So he emailed the investors, the VC firms in his network, introduced the team, and then we pitched probably to hundreds of VC funds. Like we're talking to the likes of Sequoia, A16Z, Initialized Capital, and all those people. Of course, like majority of them said no, your idea was too early. And then at the end, because Andrew was really hand-holding us, showing us the way that worked out for him, and we're able to convince one of the tier 1 VCs we're talking to give us like the first check, and then the remaining investors followed. And then we launched the startup with, build a team here in Ottawa and start building the product. So I would say a lot of our success today, we owe a big thank you to Andrew, who's our mentor.
I just want to go a little deeper into how did you develop your pitch?
Right. So I mean, the idea in terms of like, becoming experts in the problem that we're trying to solve, we had to do everything ourselves. So that's one of the benefits of going to law school is that, you're able to read through 1,000 pages of information and not feel a thing after, right? So we uncovered, the I would say somewhat of an in-depth understanding of the financial investment world, and I guess like we had a little bit of head start because we worked in corporate securities. We helped, startup companies raising funding, and also worked on the investor side, investing in startups. So we know from the starting point where the problem was headed to. So, and where the pitch developed was, he was trained by the Y Combinator's incubator program. So they had a whole template of, developing pitch. So he gave us that one-on-one lecture on what makes a good pitch good. And also he gave us like, firsthand insights into what the VCs are looking for, what the current funding environment looks like, what's going on in Silicon Valley, what's going on in New York. So having all those knowledge at hand so readily available to us through Andrew, we were able to quickly, optimize our pitching strategy, and, the rest was history. Yeah.
That's great. That sort of gives us a lot of background about how you came to start the business, and maybe it's time to talk about the business. So why don't you give us some version of that pitch on Capita and give us a little bit of an update as to where is the company at in terms of stage?
Yeah, absolutely. Before I do that, I will also say that although Andrew was super helpful, but I would say I'm super grateful of having a team that I'm working with, the founding team. So my co-founder Nick, who was a law school classmate of mine, we were the two nerds that we stayed behind in the lecture hall after securities class. We would just shoot ideas. We actually wrote our law school papers on the research side of blockchain and compliance. So we combined our law school research paper. We had the starting point of our business plan. So just I wanted to say I'm very grateful of my co-founders, and also my CTO co-founder Aaron, super smart guy, Waterloo computer scientist. And he used to be a full stack senior developer at Fair, which is a unicorn startup out of Waterloo as well. So it's just I guess like with the right people, right advisor, we're able to get this off. So now back to Capita. So initially the problem that we're working on was we think that in 2021 we had the unprecedented macroeconomic policy where not only interest rate was zero, but the Federal Reserve and the central banks were starting to buying corporate bonds and a number of other policy moves that were designed to increase capital liquidity. So there was an abundance of capital. So at the time we're thinking, well, capital formation, we're seeing a lot of decentralized autonomous organizations forming. For example, the Constitutional DAO, they raised $48 or $46 million in a span of less than 48 hours to purchase the original copy, one of the original copies of the U.S. Constitution. So, but then it didn't really work out because at the end they failed to make the purchase, and they were having difficulties, deciding on what to do with the money that they raised. So what we saw at the time was that technology like blockchain and the environment make capital formation super efficient. But where they failed was, the governance of the capital, in terms of making capital allocation decisions, in a way that is efficient and fair to the participants. So that's where the idea of Capita coming from. As lawyers, we were Nick and I, we took every single course there was in Ottawa law on corporate governance. So, and also, our daily jobs at law firms involved, helping founders to operate and govern, helping the board directors to govern their companies or their funds. So we saw the missing pieces to the puzzle on this super useful technology called blockchain, was that, we could build smart contract operating systems to help these investment funds, investment syndicates to better govern themselves, to develop better outcomes for the investors, right? So that's essentially what Capita is working on. So since founding of the company, within our customer pipeline, we have private equity funds that are working on, starting SPACs, to get SPACs listed on the NASDAQ. We're working with, private investment clubs based out of Boston, who are, just a bunch of high net worth individuals that want to, get involved in the venture game by, picking out some super early stage companies. I think that the latest, most exciting development that we have is, we're talking to some Ivy League schools and the incubator programs. The idea is we want to leverage their alumni network to fund the on-campus student-led or professor-led startups through our blockchain smart contract operating system. So that's basically Capita in a nutshell.
So are you using that the bottom-up decision-making structure of DAOs to as a fundamental platform for all of those separate things, or are you into the other platforms as well?
So I would say at the early days of Capita, we were super hyper focused on DAOs. But as we began to, we've had, I'd say, no less than 1,000 conversations with, fund managers, angel investors, founders, and so on. We basically developed new understanding of the industry that we're working in, the problem that we're solving, and who we're solving the problem for. So in the beginning, we're super focused on DAO, but now we realize that, as a capital market, as a capital liquidity is drying up because of new, Fed policies, people are becoming more, I'd say, people are becoming less euphoric. Nobody wants to start $1 billion DAO like they used to back in 2021. So we really needed to, go back to the drawing board and restudy the problem that we're trying to solve. So to answer your question, right now, people can come to us and say, hey, I want a fully decentralized governance mechanism for my investment fund, which, in another word, a DAO. We could do that. But I would say 95% of our customers are the traditional, private equity, the limited partnership, GPLP structures, or the investment syndicates, where investors themselves get to opt in on investment deals individually, case by case. So that's the beauty of smart contract, is that, you don't have the rigidity that you would traditionally see in the Web 2 software. These smart contracts are super agile, customizable to suit the needs of our clients.
Are you putting those traditional deal structures, term sheets, that sort of thing onto the blockchain, or is it the governance structure that you're really focused on?
Yeah, I would say the traditional legal contracts, they are part of the process or the part of the user experience on a platform. But I would say, they're super standardized, as a lawyer, I just see them as templates, right?
Right.
But I would say the beauty of our technology really is solving the two problems. Number one, capital formation. Number two, governance. So as an operating system, you can imagine, right? Just like your Mac operating system. For example, I want to, create an investment syndicate and invest in renewable energy sector. Okay, so what does that process look like? How do you get people on board? How do you get their capital on board? And what are the rights of the contributors of the capital? And how do you make decisions on capital allocation? So all of that is governed by the smart contract that we developed.
Okay. Now let's say Tracy and I come into some big money and we want to start a investment syndicate, and we're going to invest in startups in Southern Ontario. Do we come to Capita for a custom solution, or is there technology that allows us to flesh out what it would look like ourselves?
I would say this. So we've gathered quite a bit of data points on investment syndicates from, talking to Angelus itself, who started the whole, technology game on investment syndicates, to syndicate managers, to, syndicate LPs. I would say the customization that you're looking for, it is probably not that unique in a way that, and also I would say it's, to us, we have found a way to standardize the creation process of these syndicates with, the standard onboarding process, and we can still adjust the smart contracts, for example, to fit your governance needs. So, for example, in my syndicate, I want this threshold of investors' approval in order for the syndicate to make a decision on, giving a green light to a startup to invest in them, or whatever, right? Or onboarding new members to the syndicate. So, we do allow those parameters to be set up. But from a product roadmap perspective, because we are fairly early stage, we don't want to offer too many degrees of freedom for customization to our users. So, we're literally targeting the campus-based incubator investment syndicates so that, it's less customization requests that we have to deal with, but also at the same time, we can maintain a very high quality of a user experience.
So what's the status quo alternative then? Or someone who is looking to create that investment syndicate and is going to do it without the help of Capita?
Well, the first option is to hire a lawyer like I used to be. Of course, that would probably result in a lot of billable hours, and the process is probably going to take anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. So that's a first alternative. The other alternative is in the recent decade, we've seen great platforms like AngelList and Sidecar or other websites that you can do a simple Google search on. But I would say this: what AngelList and Sidecar, these technology providers, have developed was they have optimized the game by 10x in terms of improving the efficiency by 10x by bringing everything on a platform, on a website, having everything digitized. But if you're looking for the next 10x of optimization or increasing efficiency, the traditional Web 2 technology would not be able to deliver that. And this is where Web 3, blockchain, and Capita come in, is that we can create the next 10x of an increase in efficiency in terms of, forming an investment syndicate and allowing the syndicates to, efficiently deploy capital into whatever asset class there is. Yeah.
Gotcha. I heard through the grapevine that as you're starting this company with your co-founders, you guys are actually living together. Is that a fact?
Yes. So yes, that's a fact, because originally, after we raised, we're like, okay, we're gonna do this remote work thing, but then just we were actively soliciting advice from people that have built companies before, and the early advice we got was, remote working, it depends on what type of problems are you trying to solve? And if you're early founding team, it was super important for you to get everybody under the same roof so that you can grind out the product, or that you can efficiently communicate on your product strategy and your customer acquisition strategy. Zoom is great. Microsoft Teams is great, but it's not as great as me and Nick and Aaron, working in the same house. We're just like, a few rooms away from each other. I mean, it's a big house. It's a 5-bedroom house here in the Westboro area in Ottawa. I would say the house is probably significantly underused in terms of square footage because there's only 5 of us. So we have the team coming in to work in the morning here. We call it the hacker house. At night, my CTO, Aaron, and I, we live here. Yeah. So we do live inside the Westboro Capita hacker house. Yeah.
So that's something I think a lot of people miss about entrepreneurship is the sacrifices in lifestyle changes that you might have to make, specifically with internet-based companies, because it's not like if you start a Main Street business, the store is open and you're there, and the store is closed and you go home. It can really become all-consuming, and some people have a tolerance for that, and others don't. How do you find the balance of when you're working and when you're not, when your co-founder is just next door?
I think you've hit the nail on the head right there. So I do have, like, for the sake of transparency, it does get tiring or exhausting sometimes. But let me just say this. So we turn our garage into a fitness center. So we have a boxing bag, like heavy bag there. So, when we're stressed, we'll go hit the bag. We have a weight, we have bench. Like you can do whatever workout there is you can think of, literally just next door in our garage. Mm. And the area we live in, it's 5 minutes away from the beach. So we go for runs. I actually lost quite a bit of weight after moving here, because in this area I actually joke to people that there's nothing to do here. We're eliminating all the distractions that we would see in downtown Toronto. No parties, so it's product, running, and sleep. So it works out well, but I would say on the long run, I do miss that civilization taste. Yeah. So last week we were in Toronto for some customer meetings, and it was super refreshing to me. And as we are releasing our product, we're exponentially increasing our customer conversations. I'm anticipating that we will have to travel quite often in the new year. So I don't think it's going to be a problem for us to maintain that work-life balance living at the hacker house.
Your friends at U Ottawa might be upset that you said that there's no parties around, but
yeah, I mean, Ottawa is not known for its parties, right? So
fair. Yep, fair. How far down the road are you with this company? How long have you been at it for?
Yeah, so I would say Nick and I, we got together exactly a year ago. I visited Ottawa. So at the time, the idea was still as infancy. So I would say for us to work on this full time, we'll probably start in January this year. And then we closed our first round of financing, and then we have subsequent rounds of, micro funds, other investors coming in around summer. So we finished raising majority of our funding in April. And we already have a fully functional prototype. So essentially on our blockchain, you can literally operate an investment fund without having to go set up a bank account, without having to, go work with the existing infrastructure that you otherwise need if you're in a Web 2 or the Web 0 world. So I'd say I'm pretty happy with our product development time. And that's the beauty of having the hacker house, right? So Aaron, he's the type of guy that, if he's into something, he will literally not sleep and, grind it out. And the next morning he said, hey guys, the new system is deployed. Go take a look. So I've said, we're launching our first venture investment group on our blockchain at the end of this year. And we have a few other in our pipeline. One of the most, one which I'm super excited about is using our smart contract to start a private equity fund to seed SPACs in 2023. So yeah, super excited for what awaits us in the new year.
You hear, and I don't know how accurate this is or not, but you hear a lot that the whole blockchain and crypto space that's largely unregulated, and there's all sorts of bad actors to watch out for, and this, that, and the other. What about regulatory hurdles? Is there anything that you see on the horizon that could cause you problems or is an opportunity?
Absolutely. So I was actually working on this problem during my law school days. So for my corporate securities class, I had the choice of either taking 100% final exam or working on legal research, answering the question that you just had. I would say, blockchain and crypto are at one point were almost becoming synonymous to scams. And it was rather unfortunate that, whenever you have a new technology, there would be opportunist bad actors trying to take advantage of people who are driven by FOMO, which is fear of missing out. And you see a lot of that, in the whole ICO scams in 2017 and 2018. So in my paper, it's like a 30-page paper. The title was, Crypto Securities Regulatory Research and Suggestions for Policy in the Future, something like that. I actually said that, the U.S. government, especially the SEC and DOJ, if they had the resource of investigating every ICO there was, they'd probably put a lot of people in jail. But unfortunately, it's just not impossible to, investigate the 2,000 ICOs that have taken place. And I think, and I've been reading a lot of things about Web 1, when the original internet came about. And there was also a lot of, scams and bad actors. But eventually, the course corrected itself. And we have great companies like Shopify, which, from Ottawa here in Canada, Amazon, that, building platforms that are essentially a critical component of our daily lives. So I think like the industry itself will correct in the future. In terms of regulatory, reform, the beauty of having two lawyers and one Web3 engineer working together on a founding team is that we actually see the regulations as an advantage because it's a barrier for new entrants. That's number one. Number two is we're fully embracing the existing regulatory framework. So we literally mapped our product roadmap and product features after, the Securities Law and the Investment Company Act, the Security Exchange Act, a whole bunch of other, rules that would be for our customers. So we actually coined this term called default compliance, meaning that we want to create a platform for people to start investment syndicates or investment funds without any possibility of breaking securities law. And of course, you see how that would be super complex, which is why, we're taking a super small niche of customer segment to work with right now, right? As opposed to, going on a broad base of strategy. So we're fully embracing regulation, and we think that, another point I want to make is that if you use a traditional Web 0 or Web 2 based technologies to do what we want to do, you wouldn't be able to push your product to the limits of the securities law and corporate law. But with blockchain, decentralization, smart contracts, we're able to do that. We're able to create liquidity for LPs inside a private investment fund in a way that has never been imagined before. And we're actually working with tier 1 law firm in the US to review our compliance and everything. So I would say regulation is actually one of the things that would make me feel excited about the work that I'm doing.
I've only got one more question for you, but I want to check in with Tracy because I've been taking up a lot of airspace here. Tracy, is there anything you want to cover before I close this out?
Just one little question, because you talked about both Canada and the United States. Did you have any issues with the cross-border issue? Although I know this is all through the internet.
Right. So I think there are some differences between a company that's operating in Canada and a company that's operating in in the United States. And we were extremely fortunate to have majority of our investor base being US based. The reason I say that is because all the capital, despite people saying US is going downhill, this and that, but New York is still the financial capital of the world. It's still where I mean, you can see it in the currency rate, right? Like when Britain had that whole situation going on with poor economic policy judgment of the ex-prime minister, you see a whole lot of capital fleeing to the United States. So I would say for the industry that we're operating in order for us to 100x or 1000x our impact, we would need to do a super good job at serving the client base in the United States. And I think luckily, US and Canada, from a regulatory perspective, if you read the Securities Exchange Act and the Securities Act of Ontario, they're basically, you could see a lot of similarities. I would say there are more similarities than there are differences. So that's number one. And they're all guided by the whole principle of, creating a fair and efficient market, right? So, when I did my legal research in corporate securities law class, I knew this from the beginning. And I looked at, the Supreme Court decisions in Canada about some of the topics that came up in crypto regulations. And I also probably spent more time looking at the Supreme Court of the United States decisions and appellate court decisions, the Ninth Circuit, the Fourth Circuit appellate courts. So, I would say we're probably focusing more on understanding the problem in the U.S. and although we are trying to show love to the Canadian customers, but I would say majority of our focus is on the U.S. market.
In the industry that my business participates in, outdoor sports, it's about 10x. The U.S. market is about 10x Canada. Is it the same for you, or is it a whole order of magnitude different?
I would imagine it's probably a whole order of magnitude of difference. Yeah. Especially, U.S. having the global financial dominance in the capital markets. I would say, we need to be super diligent at understanding our customers in the U.S. and the local law, federal and state laws on the product that we're trying to push out. But we could probably like 90% of our investors are from the US as well. So I'd say, it's between 10x and probably 100x.
100x, yeah. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So 10 years from now, what does success look like for Capita?
I would say this. I think that if you look at the whole investing world in terms of, how capital is formed and how capital is deployed to, fund innovations or fund new businesses, this problem had developed, since, the ancient Egyptian time. When the Egyptians had a good year of harvest, they aggregated all the grains and they say, well, I want to start a new agriculture project in this new land. how do I do that? How do I invest? So that was kind of like the primitive way of, solving the group investing problem. And fast forward to the 1800s, maybe like the 16th to 18th century, you have the first ever, IPO, which is a Dutch East India company, right? So that was like the first ever public investment project. And corporate law kind of like developed on top of that. So the corporate law we have today is literally a variation, one could argue, that has developed since, the 17th, 18th century. So in the next 10 years, I think if we were successful, if we execute things right and do things according to our, company strategy, I would say we want to reinvent investment, group investing as we know it. Because if you look at some of the shifts that's already taking place, in my parents' age, my parents, they would put majority of their investments in a mutual fund. They would pay some fund manager 2% management fee, or 8 to 10% of average return over the course of the past 10 years, when they could have just listened to Warren Buffett and buy the S&P 500 index funds. And now you fast forward to the millennial Generation Z investors, they're in Wall Street bets. They're more active in terms of, making their capital allocation decisions. And, and in fact, the some of the investors that we work with, they're just, a few years out of college, right? So there's a whole new generation of investors, capital allocators that are, coming that are becoming wealthy, that are, making these decisions. So I think they would prefer more autonomy in terms of deciding where their funding goes. It's like, I don't know if you ever listened to J. Cole, the rapper. Yep. So he actually has a line from one of his songs. It's like, it's 2018. I'd rather make decisions on where my money is going on my smartphone screen. So that's what we want to do. We want to reinvent investing, group investing as we know it. And yeah, so I hope that answers your question.
Ben, thank you for joining us. I feel like we learned some history. We saw into the future. I know I have a much better understanding of capital formation and as it relates to the blockchain, which I'll admit is a topic that I don't have a lot of baseline knowledge in. So I appreciate you bearing with us as we did some learning here. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'd like to thank Ben Su, co-founder of Capita, for coming on the show. Whether you're managing an investment syndicate, an accelerator or an incubator, a fund, or a decentralized autonomous organization, a DAO, you can find out more about his project at percapita, all one word, .io.
We'll be right back after this short break.
In 2 minutes, you can get a tailored list of resources for your venture with the Government of Canada's Business Benefits Finder. Grow your business with this helpful online tool. Head to your favorite search engine and type in Business Benefits Finder or click on the link in the episode notes.
We return to the Frontier Entrepreneurship Podcast with co-hosts Braden, Kemp and Tracy Morningstar.
I think the whole idea of founders living together is fascinating. It's communal, like a college dorm, but adds in the pressures of something like a family business. I don't think it's for me, but I do respect it takes a huge amount of commitment because you can't just walk out of the office at 5 at night and call it a day.
Yes, it was really neat to have the window into their world. It's something you don't always see. The more personal lives of founders, what it's like to be an entrepreneur, the different ways people push to create a process. In this case, it's just such a unique way of working to actually live together in the same apartment.
Right. And I was thinking, this is an interesting time for crypto, blockchain, fintech in general. The startups that are launching now are in an uncertain or even a bearish market. They must have a ton of confidence.
Yeah, Ben is just such an interesting guy himself. He's passionate, bringing together the legal and business side, the entrepreneurship equation. And I enjoy hearing about his mentor relationship.
They're really working on something new. The platform will need to be accessible, secure, compliant, and flexible for all the different investment models and purposes. It'll be a challenge and interesting to see what they accomplish with it.
Yeah, we'll have to do an update. Maybe bring all the founders back.
At the very least, we'll learn the real story on what it's like to live with Ben.
This edition of the Frontier Entrepreneurship Podcast was made possible with the support of FedDev Ontario and the Government of Canada. Special thanks to Victoria Pichler. The executive producer of Frontier Entrepreneurship is Robert Washburn. I'm John Hayden. To find out more, head to our website, ncfdc.ca. That's ncfdc.ca. Thanks for listening.